everyone? Welcome back to 996 The Howl. Not clickbait, not hyperbole. I really do think this is one of the best off seasons the Coyotes have had in a really long time. Did not at all start this way. It was becoming one of the worst off seasons ever, with the arena vote going no, and then we just got word this morning, last night, that Alex Morello and ownership have sent a letter of intent for 40 acres of land in Mesa, Arizona, but still looking at other options in Phoenix and Scottsdale. Does not mean they're just focused on that one location, just keeping their options open. They're learning from their mistakes. No longer are they going to have all their eggs in one basket like they did with the Tempe site. For me, I like this. Ownership knows they fumbled the ball. They got to learn from their mistakes and do this right. I think this is the absolutely last chance they have. So it's great news, a little bit of positive news for the arena front. Not really much to read into it or analyze. A letter of intent just is a form of business where you want to sit down and start negotiating the finer details. So that just sends a signal to the city that they look forward to moving ahead and progressing in negotiations. If it falls through, they have other sites and they'll send letters of intent to other sites as well. So let's get to the on ice. Like I said, a great off season. They might be the most improved team in the NHL from when the season ended to right now. These additions are some of the best they've had in any offseason. The amount of NHL veterans, the amount of actually good quality players. It's not quantity, it's quality. Sure, they got so many new players in that summer exodus, but there are guys like Eriksson, Galchenyuk, Beagle, Ladd, what have you. These are quality guys, quality NHL players that will make the team better and just increase the depth of the Coyotes that they haven't had in so long. No longer have to rely on Clayton Keller. So we get into it. It's order of chronological order, pretty sure. Sean Durzi, they acquired for a second-round pick. And then a bunch of free agents. Zucker, Stetcher, Bukestad comes back. Kerfoot, Sanford, Dermott. They get Cooley on an entry-level contract, which signaled to me that this upcoming season, I thought it was going to be another down year, and then next year they'll start to get the gas going and actually compete. But getting Cooley and then immediately after that getting Dumba just shows me that they're really accelerating this rebuild, but not in a negative way. As you can see here, they didn't give up anything. If anything, they just spent cash. That is the only downside. All of these guys are on such low contracts. Dumba's 1 year, Zucker's 1 year, Kerfoot and Bukestad are 2 years, which I like because they're more versatile players and depth players that you could move around in your lineup and insulate younger players upcoming in this season and next season. So I like that. Not a lot of long-term contracts, no bad contracts, and that's what I really like from here. And still here, we'll get to that later, all these draft picks they still have. This is why I think this is such a unique rebuild and such a good progress for the team to move forward, and finally the fans sort of get rewarded for being so loyal to the team. Subtractions, like look at this list, except for Christian Fischer, who albeit a bit weak on the ice, but a major locker room guy, one of the best friends of Clayton Keller. It was really tough to see him go. The intangibles he brings are unmatched, and that is the only downside of losing Christian Fischer. On ice, I think they did upgrade from Fischer full stop. So Zach Kassian they buy out Patrick Nemeth. Fischer goes to Detroit. Mackey goes to the Rangers. Brett Ritchie, I didn't even research where he went. And then they had to sell off a second round pick in 2024, which they have a lot of. They still have 3 second round picks in 2024, so it didn't hurt them too much to acquire a young offensive defenseman in Sean Durzi, who they don't have to wait for. They don't have to wait for him. It's not like he's a new draft pick. They have to wait 2-3 years for him to come in the lineup. He's already hit that tier of you were drafted, you played in your juniors, now it's about being a cemented NHL defenseman, and that's what I like about Durzi and what is really valuable for having so many second round picks third-round picks. These are used to acquire players who are sort of struggling with their current team. Maybe the situation's not the best. Maybe the NHL team has too many competitive defensemen and these young guys can't really break through. And then Arizona comes in, hey, we got some draft picks. We'll take this guy and see how he performs in our system. If he doesn't work well, we'll just move on from him. And for me, Jersey is sort of, that Victor Soderstrom player who's at that next step, and we're still waiting for Soderstrom. We'll talk about him later. So that's the additions and the subtractions for the Coyotes, unmatched, I think, around the NHL. The fact that they didn't really give up so much and they added so much quality is really good for the team. And now we'll move on to the roster lineup. Here, the first line staying together, Keller, Hayden, Schmaltz. There's no reason to separate them. They haven't really shown any negatives to being together. But, last offseason we said the exact same thing with Boyd, Keller, and Schmaltz. So they kind of took a nosedive during last season, and then Hayden took Boyd's spot. So as long as, there's nothing to report to be separated, they'll stick together. The second line, Zucker, Cooley, and then I have Gunther. I am vehemently against putting Gunther on the fourth line. I just can't wrap my head around why we would put Gunther on the fourth line. If it's to shield his 5-on-5 minutes, we didn't do that with Michelli last season. We're not doing it with Cooley this season. Cooley is a bona fide second line center on this roster. So put Cooley with a veteran in Zucker, an incredible, talented playmaker in Cooley who could also score as well. And hopefully there's some magic there. We all know Schmaltz will get injured this season, and that's going to open up some spots on that top line, and then everyone gets moved around. The third line is that classic Krause, Bukestad, Michelli line. It worked last year. It should work this year again. And then I agree, you have three centers on that third line, on that fourth line with Boyd, McBain, and Kerfoot. McBain's going to be that fourth line center. Boyd is sort of the odd player out here. I'm not sure what they're going to do with Boyd. I think going into training camp, there's not a lot of spots for some of these guys to get jobs. And let's say a guy like Carcone is really good on the fourth line, plays well with McBain, and then Kerfoot's there as well. He could beat out Boyd, and then the Coyotes are left to throw Boyd on waivers. And I doubt he would get picked up on waivers, and he'd clear and probably be unhappy about it and go to Tucson. Or they trade him, but I don't think Boyd has a lot of trade value, and I also don't think they should start trading players. Yes, they have so many centermen in this forward group, but injuries happen, and it's best to be prepared for the disastrous situations because, what if Vemelka gets a season-long injury and then we're left with Ingram and Prozoshov, or what if Keller, God forbid, gets a season-long injury as well? There are a couple injuries away from, it's another one of those years where they draft between 5th and 10th, and it's a miserable time. So keep these guys together, see what happens. Don't try to be cute and start trading. They don't even need assets back anymore. They still have a boatload of draft picks. So Boyd, not really sure if there's a market to be traded yet. We'll go to the defensemen. I got Moser and Jersey as a first pairing. And then I have Valimaki and the newly signed defenseman in Dumba. I am so sorry, Soderstrom bros. I tried my best to put Soderstrom in this lineup, and I had him as a second line pairing with Valimaki. But then when I moved on to the penalty killing defenseman, I couldn't put Valimaki on the second penalty kill unit because Valimaki barely killed penalties last season. He averaged about 30 seconds per game, and they heavily relied on Stetcher and Brown last season for penalty killing, which is why I think just in terms of structure of this team, you need good penalty killing, and if they like Stetcher and Brown as penalty killers, they're going to be on the roster and play, and not, throw Soderstrom or Valimaki on a second power play penalty kill unit, which is why I have Stetcher and Brown over there. So Soderstrom becomes that seventh defenseman, and then you also have Dermott, who's listed as injured reserve right now on Cap Friendly. So if you go on Cap Friendly, it will show They have 48 contracts, but Dermott's healthy. It's reported he's healthy, so he'll be their 49th contract. I really want Soderstrom in this roster. I think he'll stay with the team for the first quarter of the season, maybe rotating in and out with someone. Like I said, if there's an injury to anyone like Moser, Dursey, or Valimaki, Soderstrom's that first guy there. He is that offensive young defenseman who's not really good defensively that could replace a high-end defenseman in those three that I mentioned. And then our goalies stay relatively the same in Vejmelka, Ingram, and Prosvetov. Cap hit, $79 million. They have about $4 million in cap space, which, a lot of teams might be like, wow, how are the Coyotes, even fans are like, the Coyotes are pretty much at the cap, only $3.9 million below, but they're actually only spending about $58 million in salary, and that's because they have $21 million, almost $21.4 million tied up in LTIR. So when I ran these numbers, I think the internal budget for the Coyotes is $60 million. They're spending $58, so they got $2 million of wiggle room there. But the LTIR brings them above the cap floor. The cap floor is about $62 million. So these LTIR contracts help the Coyotes get over the floor without spending that money. And like I said, contract space, they have one contract left. We're still waiting on Yan Unique if they're going to re-sign him. There's some problems with Unique and the Coyotes and Unique's agent. I think the agent for Unique wants over $1 million and a one-way contract. Whereas I think the Coyotes, they really don't know much about Unique. He barely plays. He was in the doghouse last season because he took too many penalties. He needs another season in the American Hockey League. But I think Unique's agent is a bit in his ear and is saying, hey, you're worth way more than that. So Coyotes are playing hardball. They own the rights to Unique. If Unique doesn't sign by December 1st, he can't play in the NHL. So the Coyotes have all the leverage there. They can wait, and they really don't need Unique right now. They've completely replaced them on this NHL roster. So that's it. I really like this roster. I would have to look into it more if this is the best forward group we've had ever, since their playoff run in 2012. I mean, there's so much talent on this roster. Each one of these guys is capable of scoring 15 goals at minimum, and they're just a threat every single line offensively, and they got some very good defensive forwards in this lineup as well. It's all not run and gun. They're very deep, could be very responsible. I think the weakest link right now is the goaltending situation. If Vejmelka stands on his head this season, I could see them get wild card 2 spot. It's not out of the realm of possibilities with this roster. If Vejmelka and Ingram struggle, they hover around 900 save percentage, then yeah, they'll probably finish in the draft order between 10 and 14. But, it's up to them. The goalie's going to take them as far as they want to go. No longer do we have stellar goaltending in Mike Smith or Darcy Kemper. So they're going to have to step up. And if they start playing .915 save percentage hockey, this team could be unbelievable. Then we go to special teams. They also hired, as one of their additions, I didn't write it down, a new power play coach and also a new face-off coach in Forsyth, who spent a decade with the Washington Capitals and getting Ovechkin to score almost the most goals in NHL history. So that's really good. We haven't had a potent offense in what seems like a decade as well. In those Talkett years, we were really good on the penalty kill, really good defensively, but offensively we struggled. In Tourigny's tenure, who's still awaiting an extension, he hasn't had the full four lines of talent to really see what he can do. This is the first year of Tourigny where the roster is not an excuse, and we'll see what kind of coach he really is this season, which I think he deserves an extension. I want him to get extended. I think he's done a remarkably good job with the pretty bad talent he's had to work with. But this year, it will be a real test. It's not an excuse. He can't hide. This is a good crop of players he has to work with, and hopefully he's up to the task and just brings out some of the offense the Coyotes have missing for over a decade. So power play number 1, I got Keller, Hayden, Schmaltz. Again, no reason to separate them. It's been working. No reason to break them up. On the defensive side, I went with 4 forwards for each power play unit. There's just too many forwards here to have a 2 defenseman type power play, and we'll see what type of power play Forsyth likes to roll out. But I got Zucker and Sean Durzi on the points. My reasoning here is Keller and Schmaltz will be on the half boards. That's where they like to play. So I don't really know why I would put Michelli with Keller and Schmaltz. Hayden and Zucker. Hayden will be in front of the net. Zucker will go to the dirty areas and get pucks out and feed Keller or Schmaltz. Then Durzi will be the quarterback, sort of that V or triangle for the power play. I like that. Like I said, if I put Cooley or Michelli on that power play unit number 1, it's too many players who want to touch the puck. Hayden, he has skill and talent, but he doesn't need to touch the puck. He has learned last season, just go to the front of the net. And, if he doesn't really perform well at that, then you could add a guy like Krause up there on power play unit number 1. But for power play unit number 2, I got Krause, Cooley, Gunther, Michelli, and then Gunther and Valimaki as the point defenseman. I didn't put Moser on power play number 2. I think Valimaki really surprised me more, and I liked him more offensively last season than Moser. I think Moser's might turn into just a really good defensive defenseman, but I'm glad to be wrong. I really like Moser. I just think Valimaki has more of an offensive upside than Moser, but Valimaki and Moser could switch out of that power play number 2 unit. Gunther is there as well as a sharpshooter, and then you have guys as Cooley and Michelli who like to hold on to the puck, excellent playmakers. Krause goes to the front of the net and then, causes havoc, and Gunther could roam around, find the open seam, and get sick passes from Michelli and Cooley. So that's my thought process there. Penalty killing, Krause, Bukestad, Moser, and Dumba. I didn't want to put Dumba on power play unit number 2, but I know some people might. I just think Minnesota had enough of Dumba last season, took him off their power play. He barely played power play minutes. I could see him on the Coyotes be that power play number 2, and they just tell Dumba, hey, you're just a facilitator. Just give the puck to Cooley, Michelli, or feed Gunther for those shots. So I could see Dumba take Valimaki's spot, but I still would go with Valimaki. So I don't think there's any, controversy with my penalty killing units. I already mentioned that Stetcher and Brown were heavily relied upon for the penalty killing last year, which is why I have them together here. And if Brown is on penalty killing unit number 2, he has to be playing. He has to be on the bench. So unfortunately, Stetcher and Brown have to play there. I don't see Durzi as a penalty killer, obviously, and Valimaki, like I said, barely played penalty killing minutes last year for the Coyotes. So before I go to draft picks, am I done here? Pretty sure I covered all my points here. So they added so much quality to this roster. They added a lot of talent. They didn't give up anything. Anything of value they gave up was a second-round pick next year. And they still have, it's all wiped out now. They still have a tremendous boatload of draft picks. Next offseason, they have 1 first-round pick, 3 second-round picks, 3 third-round picks. 2025, they still got that first. Then they have 4 second-round picks. 4 still. Just imagine the talent they already have now. And then next offseason, you're going to bring in guys like Geeky, maybe Simishev and Lamoureux. And then you still have all these draft picks. Like, this rebuild might be the best rebuild we've seen. If they just hit on all these guys like Daniel Boots, Simishev, Lamoureux, Geeky, this could be one of the best executed rebuilds we've seen. The fact that they're getting better so quickly without mortgaging the future, without wasting more assets, without signing terrible free agent contracts. Their free agent contracts are so minimal, doesn't affect them for the future, just makes them better now. And then I just really like the direction they're going, which is why I think this is the best offseason we've seen from the Arizona Coyotes. To me, I think this offseason that we just had right now, that we're having, I was expecting this next off season. I thought this upcoming season with Cooley spending another year in college, not getting so high profiled NHLers, it would be another, finish 7th overall in the draft order, between 7, 11. That's what I was thinking for this this upcoming season. But they just said, you know what, we could afford to get all these good players, sign Cooley, get this team excited, get the fans excited, just, catch a lot of teams by surprise while also maintaining our motive and mission statement of building through the draft, keeping all our draft picks, and just moving forward and taking steps each season to be better. I just think it's a really successful offseason. So that's it for me. 22 minutes of just saying how much of a great offseason this was. I am just so excited for this team. They really did a great job after such a negative news storm of losing the Tempe vote. They're doing everything they can for Arizona Coyotes fans to stick with the team and rewarding them for sticking with the team through so much. I said after the Tempe vote, I will no longer be buying Coyotes merchandise until they get a shovel in the ground for a new arena site, but they are making that the hardest commitment I've made in a while. They're doing everything they can to be like, hey, spend money on this team, go out, buy merch, go see a game. I'm just trying to refrain from it. I think they're making it such a hard commitment, like I just said. And for fans that are not as strong-willed as me, I could very easily see people just going out, getting a Cooley jersey. Just the hype and excitement around this team is unmatched across the league. Like, the Coyotes are one of the most talked about teams this offseason. Just the peppering of good news, positive news, and not really any negative news since the vote went south, except for, the Alex Galchenyuk debacle. But I really thought the team handled that situation well, got ahead of it early, terminated his contract before any of the details came out, nipped it in the bud, and then once the details came to fruition and were public, everyone agreed that was the best decision for the Coyotes. So they're learning from their mistakes, which is all you could hope for. Definitely learn from their mistake of that draft pick in 2020. Just didn't really try to save face, just said, you know what, we don't need this. It's negative PR. It's not our team's commitment to inclusion, diversity, and being a class act organization. So you just move on and just stick with their loyal players and players that they think represent the Coyotes as a whole. So that's it for me. Thank you for watching. If you like what you see, spread the word. And as always, thank you for your support.